A grand jury was formed after Officer Darren Wilson of the Ferguson Police Department fatally shot local thug Michael Brown. The grand jury failed to indict Officer Wilson. This led to a huge outcry. There's an old saying attributed to Judge Sol Wachtler that any good prosecutor can get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. So why did the grand jury fail to indict Officer Wilson? Well, I'm going to tell you. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With cold, blunt analysis cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's time for the Johnny Walker Dread Show.
So, why are grand juries so quick to indict? Well, it comes down to the rules. Typically, only the prosecutor presents evidence to a grand jury. After all, the grand jury is not there to judge whether the defendant is innocent or guilty, but rather to judge whether the prosecution has enough evidence to at least go forward with a trial. The grand jury is a safety measure to keep prosecutors from arresting people on bogus charges and forcing them to undergo the aggravations of a trial. A grand jury not only can save a suspect from being tried unfairly, but it can also save the court system a lot of money. If Kyle Rittenhouse had gone through a grand jury instead of just being prosecuted directly, then perhaps Kyle would never have been tried in the first place. We'll never know. With these rules, the defense typically is not allowed to present a self-defense claim to the grand jury. That's what the trial is for. Usually, the defense can challenge the authenticity of evidence, but does not present evidence of its own. As such, the system is still stacked against the defendant. And of course, the standard is not proof beyond reasonable doubt. Even preponderance of evidence would be too strict because the defense doesn't get to present exculpatory evidence of its own. To get an indictment, all that the prosecution has to show is that a crime was committed and that the accused probably did it. However, the prosecutor broke the rules. Not only did he present inculpatory evidence to the grand jury, he also presented exculpatory evidence. Why would he do that? He doesn't have to, and he wants a conviction, right? The answer is simple. He was smart. You see, his office conducted an investigation alongside the FBI, which conducted its own independent investigation. He had plenty of physical evidence at his disposal, as well as 3 autopsies. And they all told the same story. Darren Wilson acted in self-defense. The hands up, don't shoot mantra was purely a work of fiction. He knew it. Also, Darren Wilson's self-defense claims were iron tight. All of the physical evidence pointed to it. 8 witnesses told the police that he acted in self-defense. The autopsies also confirmed it. Everything that Darren Wilson was telling the cops about what happened matched exactly the physical evidence, the autopsies, and witness testimony. And by witness testimony, I mean credible witnesses. Ones that didn't end up later admitting that they lied, or couldn't get their story straight, or whose testimony was obviously wrong because it didn't match the physical evidence. So, the chances of conviction were 0, because Officer Wilson was innocent. So he doesn't want to prosecute an innocent man, but the crowd is raging for a trial. If he fails to prosecute, there will be riots galore. People will rage against him. But if the grand jury chooses to indict Officer Wilson, he has little choice but to go forward with the trial. Well, what to do? What do we do? Why not present everything to the grand jury? Make them have it all. Let the grand jury soak up the blame for a decision not to try Officer Wilson. And that's exactly what happened. The grand jury looked at all the evidence, and Officer Wilson's innocence was unmistakable. Now, BLM supporters would look at this and think,
It's good that the grand jury got to see everything. The more evidence they got to see, the better chance it had of coming to a rightful decision.
I mean, it was unorthodox, but it was still good that the grand jury got to see it all, right? Are you kidding? They rioted.
The reaction to the decision not to charge Officer Darren Wilson was almost immediate violence by some in the crowd that assembled outside the Ferguson Police Department. Scenes of looting and Ferguson aflame made this St. Louis suburb look more like a war zone than a small town. Once the fires are put out and the violence ends, Ferguson will need to be rebuilt.
They didn't care about the evidence. They wanted an indictment. Truth be damned. They wanted Officer Wilson tried regardless of the facts. Today, there are two types of people who wanted Officer Wilson tried in court for shooting Michael Brown: the ignorant, who never bothered to examine the evidence, and the evil, who couldn't care less if he was innocent or not. And to this day, a man who is a good cop is probably struggling to get through life. If anybody knows how I can get a hold of Officer Wilson, I would love to interview him. Like my video and subscribe to my channel.
I've had enough. I've had enough of racism and bigotry, and St. Louis can do better.